Hey everyone, today we're going to talk about the early theories of psychology. And these early theories were from the late 1800s to early 1900s. They were primarily centered in Germany, Austria, and the United States. And the first one we're going to talk about is structuralism. And structuralism was designed by Wilhelm Wundt. He is the first person who developed a psych lab. And his theory was that we do what we do because the structures of our mind, our emotions, our memory, and our thoughts. And he used a technique called introspection, which is really cool. We use it today, but it fell out of fashion for about 100 years. And what is introspection? It is where you self-report. If I ask you how much pain you're in and you say a scale of 1 to 10, that's introspection. And we can do that with we can say, how angry are you? How stressed are you? How anxious are you? How sad are you? And we are really good indicators of where we are, how we're feeling. And this is useful information. And it's sad that it fell out of fashion, but that we didn't have the science to measure it. And measuring the brain and measuring what the brain is doing is a relatively new ability with the development of the functional MRI and PET scans and these different techniques we're able to do with the brain. It's really fascinating. We'll talk more about that in chapter 3. So the next theory I'm going to talk about is the psychoanalytic theory, and it was developed by Sigmund Freud. He's probably one of the most famous psychologists. His theory really held in the psychological community from the late 1800s until like 1970s. And there's still a lot of influence in the psychological culture. He focused on the unconscious mind, which as a scientist, it's pretty hard to measure the unconscious mind. And he felt that we do what we do because of unconscious motives, unconscious drives, that there's a lot of conflict between what we think we should do and what we want to do. And this causes stress and causes maladaptive behaviors. We will talk more about him when we talk about personality, because his was the first theory of personality. And also he was a psychologist. He worked with people with mental health issues. He had a pretty dim view of humanity, in my opinion. He thought we were all pretty dark and twisted. But anyway, so his research is provocative, I'll say that. And then the next theory I'm going to talk about is the functional theory, adaptation, sorry. And it's the theory of adaptation, and it's functionalism. And it says we do what we do so that we can live long enough to procreate. It basically is an evolutionary view of psychology. And I'm going to give y'all a very provocative, possibly controversial example. Because I think sometimes we remember those more. There's this person who was being interviewed on talk radio, and he was saying that men were genetically programmed to cheat. Now, I don't think this is true. I don't think this is true at all. But are men, is it in their best interest from a functional view to have more partners than it is for women? Well, let's look at cave person days. When you were a cave person, you weren't really guaranteed that you were going to live long enough to have kids, and you weren't really guaranteed that any of your kids would live to adulthood, because times are really hard. Times are really tough. And so if you're a man, and we're animals, and animals are kind of programmed, genetically programmed, whatever, to produce offspring. So our species continues. So if you're a man, it would kind of make sense to have more partners to maximize your opportunity. Because women, we only get one chance every 9 months to have a child. So for women, the theory is that it made more sense for them to be more selective to increase the odds that their child would survive. Whereas men, it made more sense for them to increase the numbers. Now, what does this mean? I don't know. You can take it for whatever it's worth. But it's an example of why a behavior could be seen from the evolutionary perspective, the functional psychology perspective. Also can explain good social skills. Why we develop good social skills, like smiling when people smile at us, because it does increase the chance that we will live longer. And it does increase the chance we will find someone to have children with. So anyway, those are some of the examples of that. I'm not really don't really cover Gestalt theory until we get into sensation and perception. It's how we view the world, not from a psychological view, but from like a literal view, like how do we see things. Then I would like to talk about behaviorism. Behaviorism is kind of in direct opposition to Freud. It's like the unconscious doesn't matter. It's what we can observe matters. We need to focus on observable behavior because we are a science. So if we want to know if someone's angry, we watch their behavior. Are they hitting? Are they yelling? Are they screaming? Are they crying? Are they cursing? If we want to see if they're sad, are they crying? Are they withdrawn? If we want to see if they're stressed, we can look at like their muscle tension, nervous types of behavior, those kind of things. And it also says that we do what we do because of what either comes before our behavior or what comes after. Like with behavior modification, is what becomes after our behavior. Like if we get rewarded for something, we're more likely to do it. If we get punished for something, we are less likely to do it. We covered this a lot when we talk in the learning chapter. I would say about 3/4 of the learning chapter is behaviorism. And then even though it's kind of it's more in the middle of not quite late, not quite early, would be the humanistic theory. And the book calls it humanism, but everyone I know who studied the humanistic theory calls it the humanistic theory. And it was in the 1950s, 60s, and mainly the two main people there were Abraham Maslow and Carl Rogers. And we talk about them more with motivation and personality theory. And also with Rogers, we talk about him because he was, his theory was one of the first non-Freudian theories of therapy. So, and they, as opposed to Freud, who believed that humans were kind of dark and twisted, they wanted to focus on growth and potential and how we can live our full lives. This kind of also has had a huge influence on the positive psychology movement, where, you know, if you believe you can do something, you're more likely to be able to do it. Now, that doesn't mean that, you know, if we can manifest winning the lottery, because trust me, I've tried, but it does mean that if you have a positive view, you are more likely to be able to do your goal. So now in the next little video, we're going to talk about the modern day viewpoints of psychology, and I hope to see you then. Oh, I didn't tell you the question. Sorry, this is my first time videoing, so you know, there's gonna be a lot of mistakes. So the question for you is, pick one of these views. You may have to research it a little bit more because I just gave you little nuggets about them. Pick your favorite one or the one you think is the most interesting, and tell me why you think it's the most interesting. Thank you. See you next time.